to this event, and we are excited that you've joined us for this important webinar where we are looking at how best our journals in Zimbabwe can work towards complying with DOAJ standards. But I'm also happy to say that DOAJ standards are not just for DOAJ, but they are the same standards that are applicable at global scale when it comes to ensuring that our journals meet the expected standards in terms of quality. I'm happy to welcome you to this important event. And I don't want to take much of your time, but at this point in time, I would want to invite Dr. Tozama Kwebani from the Academy of Science South Africa, ASSAf for short, to give us her welcome remarks. Thank you, and over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Program Director. Thank you. Good morning, distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, collaborators, and our partners. It is absolutely honor and privilege to welcome you all to this webinar on behalf of the Academy of Sciences of South Africa. This gathering represents a unique and invaluable opportunity to foster collaboration, to exchange ideas, to learn from the experts, to unlearn as well as to relearn. A special welcome to Professor Kabanda from Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences, Dr. Hudson from Zimbabwe Council for Higher Education, Dr. Rosemary from Zimbabwe University Library Consortium, Ms. Catherine from the Directory of Open Access Journals, my colleague Ina from the Director of Open Access Journals, as well as the Academy of Sciences of South Africa, as well as our Program Director. And ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to this workshop, to this webinar. It actually follows the successful SADC workshop on democratizing knowledge through open science that we co-hosted with the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences and other SADC academies and in the region. And that was aimed at fostering cooperation and advocating for open science principle within the academic communities. Because as academies of sciences, we have a unique position to bridge between government and civil society. So it enables us to offer evidence-based science advice and amplify international influence through a collective voice. And I can see that the key stakeholders that participated in that workshop that was hosted on the 27th of August, they are also participating in this workshop. When we look at open access journal, it is one component of open science, and we hope it will be fully embraced at the continental level. We hope that by the end of this webinar, you will leave with a newfound appreciation for open science and its impact. Thank you for joining us, and let's have fun and enlightening day ahead. Thank you very much. Over to you, Program Director.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tozama. At this point in time, I would want to welcome Professor Kabanda. Professor Kabanda has been tied up in another event elsewhere, an equally important event elsewhere, but I'm happy to say that his colleagues from the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences are joining us, and I want to mention their names. We should be having Professor Charles Nachi. We should also be having Dr. Dexter Tagure and Exnevia, who are Professor Kabanda's colleagues who will be with us today. But at this point in time, I want to invite Ina to play welcome remarks that are coming from Professor Kabanda. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I welcome you on behalf of Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences, and to want to emphasize that Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences is in full support of open access scholarly journals. we see ourselves playing a very important role. But the concept really of open science is one where we are encouraging and ensuring that we make scientific data, research, and publications easily accessible by all the public and professional science members, so that we simplify the publishing and dissemination of knowledge. There's a close relationship between open science and open access journals in support of the collaboration that we see, and that is important for the future of the nation and research. Now, ZULC can play an important role, that number one, by establishing open access journals or encouraging leadership in that area, and the promotion of open access policies. ZULC is in a position also to provide leadership in capacity building and training, so that we educate the academics on how to navigate the open access publishing landscape to ensure that they comply with the principles of open access. Collaboration with international open access initiatives is important, and facilitation of open peer review is a role that ZULC has capacity for in promotion of platforms and journals that integrate that. And also we are in the position also to work closely with national institutions in the advocacy and the policy development in support of that. This initiative is buttressed by successful initiatives that we've seen in our space. These include the African Open Science Platform, and also the establishment of ZIMREN, which is a national research educational network, which was established in Zimbabwe through the Vice Chancellor's Association. These initiatives are already in place in support of that, but going forward, what we need is to have a national open science cloud that supports that as a country, and also place much emphasis on digital literacy and development programs, and introduce some open science ambassador programs, so that we encourage those that are already in this space. So the role of ZULC is not just about advocacy and thought leadership and capacity building and training, but the networking is equally important, as well as also the advocacy and policy development that is important. The standards and ethical considerations are also very important, and this is an area where ZULC can work with all the institutions in the contextualization of open science practices and incorporation of indigenous knowledge in support of all that. So capacity building, local training, respect for intellectual property, as well as also ownership and encouragement of inclusivity and equity in respect of this is important. And this is an area that we see ourselves coming in at the Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences. So by fostering an open access environment, ZULC can help democratize knowledge, improve the visibility of Zimbabwean research, and contribute to the global exchange of scholarly information. I'm looking forward on behalf of ZULC that we can improve access to knowledge through open educational resources, increase regional and international collaboration in this particular area, and also working together in terms of capacity building. We welcome you on behalf of ZULC, and I thank you for coming to this webinar. Thank you.
At this point in time, I want to invite Dr. Maturure, the Zimbabwe University Library Consortium Chair, and she's also the University Librarian at Africa University, to give her remarks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chiparausha, and good morning, everyone. The Zimbabwe University Library Consortium supports the idea of having all our journals accredited by platforms such as the DOAJ, as it is a sign of good standard practice. Librarians are readily available to assist journal editors, peer reviewers, and authors to ensure that proper journal publishing standards are met. The Zimbabwe University Library Consortium is thankful to DOAJ for extending such an important training to Zimbabwe, and we want to welcome everyone to this webinar. University libraries have long been at the forefront of supporting academic research, and in recent years, they have taken on an on an even more proactive role in advancing open access. One of the key ways libraries are promoting open access is through the involvement of scholarly communication librarians, who are instrumental in advocating for open access at both institutional and national levels. And the primary role for the scholarly communication librarians are as follows: to educate faculty and researchers about the benefits of open access, to promote institutional open access policies, and to engage with stakeholders. By advocating for and helping to develop policies, scholarly communication librarians can ensure that the institution is aligned with global trends toward open access compliance. University libraries, through the work of scholarly communication librarians, play a crucial role in advancing open access in universities. This is done by managing institutional repositories, supporting open access publishing, ensuring compliance with funder mandates, and educating the academic community so that they can help scholarly research more accessible to the whole world. As open access continues to evolve, librarians will remain key advocates and facilitators in ensuring that knowledge is freely shared, enhancing the visibility and impact of research while upholding the principles of academic integrity and accessibility. This morning, as a Zimbabwe University Library Consortium, I want to welcome you to this webinar and enjoy the day and all the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maturure, and thank you very much, Dr. Tozama and Professor Kabanda. Colleagues, we have been given assurance of enough support from very important stakeholders. We are delighted that ASSAf has pledged to help us, and Zimbabwe Academy of Sciences, ZULC, has also pledged to do the same. And I'm also happy that librarians have come on board, and the chair of the University Libraries Consortium, Dr. Maturure, has also indicated that there are librarians who have been employed specifically to attend to issues of scholarly communication, and this includes journal publication. Therefore, the ball is now in our court as journal editors, as journal publishers, to ensure that we work with these important stakeholders to ensure that quality standards are met when it comes to our research output in Zimbabwe. I would want at this point in time to invite two of our colleagues who have been introduced already. That's Catherine and Aina from DOAJ to take over at this point in time and take us through the webinar. Thank you, and over to you, ladies.
Thank you so much for the overview and introduction, and thank you to everyone who's come and voiced how important open access is to the scholar community in Zimbabwe. We're really happy to have everyone on board for this webinar, and we're really excited that all of you are here to join us. So I'm going to jump right in. Please use the chat to introduce yourself, where you're from, perhaps if you have a journal that you're affiliated with. We'd love to hear from you in the chat. If you have questions, you can also put questions in the Q&A box. We also like you to share what your expectations are of this session and what you hope to take away from this training. So please do engage. We also want to acknowledge that this is a really important partnership between many different organizations that's made this event happen, and we're very thrilled to have everyone on board and to have everyone come in and speak on behalf of their organizations. Today we're going to talk about very briefly what open access is, what the Directory of Open Access journals are, and then I'll hand over to Ina to talk about criteria for inclusion, how you apply in the editorial process. We also hope to answer any questions that you might have along the way. So if you have questions, pop them in as soon as you get them, and we'll deal with them at the end. So what is open access? Open access is immediate and free access to the reader to scholarly material. This could be books or journals without any barriers. So for example, paying a fee or delayed access. Copyright is defined in open access and user rights are defined. Ina's going to talk a bit more about copyright and Creative Commons licenses later on. But generally open access is free to use, free to redistribute. In terms of the Zimbabwean context, there are only 2 journals on DOAJ at the moment. And these are the 2 African journals from Zimbabwe that are indexed in DOAJ. We, of course, hope that there will be many more applications after events like today, and there will be some information on more guidance and help throughout this webinar. So what is the Directory of Open Access Journals, and why should you want your journal to be included on there? DOAJ is a unique and extensive index of diverse peer-reviewed open access journals. We have a mission to raise the profile, visibility, and impact of all quality open access journals, globally, regardless of discipline, geography, or language. Our criteria are an unofficial gold standard for open access journal publishing, trusted across the scholarly community in different parts of the world, used for a lot of different things. Our services and metadata are provided completely free of charge to everyone and is often used in decision-making, research, conversations on guiding researchers where to publish, so used by libraries, institutions, and researchers worldwide. DOAJ was created in 2003 after someone suggested at a conference that it would be good to have this kind of resource. It might not be a surprise that it was a librarian that decided to take this mission on and create DOAJ. That was first founded and funded by Lund University in Sweden. It grew from 2003, where it had just over 300 journals indexed, to 2023, where we reached 20,000 journals on the 20th anniversary. And it keeps growing and it keeps increasing. Throughout history, we have had a lot of significant milestones. In 2014, the whole inclusion criteria was completely restructured in collaboration with the community. And new criteria meant that every single journal in DOAJ had to reapply to continue to be indexed in DOAJ. The reapplication project started in 2015 and concluded in 2017 and resulted in removing almost 40% of the journals in the database. So that's been quite a journey, and we continue to develop the criteria of DOAJ, obviously in collaboration with the community and what's happening worldwide with scholarly communications and open access. The last couple of years has seen an increase in open access worldwide. There's an increase in interest, there's an increase in journals. We definitely noticed this on the number of journals that apply to the index. We also see how DOAJ is integrated in a lot of different tools related to funding and policies, and also integrated into policies, national policies and governance in lots of different countries worldwide. So a very important index that has established itself in many different ways across history. This is the current geographical overview of journals in DOAJ. You can see that there are some areas where we have more indexed journals coming in, and then we have less journals indexed from Africa. Africa is one of our strategic priorities at DOAJ, which is why we're thrilled about this webinar and the opportunity to increase the number of applications and journals indexed from African countries, including Zimbabwe. Currently, DOAJ has almost 21,000 journals from 135 countries, and we're covering 80 languages. So it's one of the most diverse indexes out there. In 2023, DOJ received almost 8,000 applications and more than 4,000 update requests from journals. 24 of these applications were accepted for inclusion, so there is quite a high rejection rate, but Ina is going to talk to you about what are the common reasons in terms of getting or talk to you through the process and what is important to note before you apply to make sure that you're part of the 24%. The average review time is just under 3 months. The DOJ consists of about 20 core staff members, and then we have over 100 volunteer editors, and we currently have just come out of reviewing our ambassador program, and we're currently at 13 ambassadors. DOJ, as I mentioned, is highlighting journals from all kinds of strands, all kinds of publishers, but we do like to emphasize the point that we do give more visibility and recognition to journals from societies and university presses, journals from areas and languages underrepresented in other databases and from underrepresented regions, endowments and subscribe to open journals. Because these go into DOJ, and then DOJ is integrated into a lot of library discovery systems used worldwide, meaning that the information in DOJ gets kind of comes up and pops up in lots of different databases, library catalogs worldwide. So this is a really good way of increasing the visibility of your journal. It's also a kind of a reputational thing. DOJ index journals means that your journal is demonstrating that you're meeting good quality publishing standards due to the criteria that we have. You can attract more authors and readers locally and from around the world, and this is due to all these integrations into databases. It makes it easier to discover, and also means, like in some cases, DOJ is a criteria for a specific nation or a specific project. We also have local languages, and we have so many volunteer editors because they do review journal applications in a lot of different languages, and that enables us to index journals from a lot of different languages. As I mentioned, it increases discoverability, and it can enhance the reputation and societal impact of your journal. And yes, as mentioned, DOJ's index included in government lists like the DHET in South Africa. So this is another kind of overview of the different types of visibility and discoverability and benefits of being indexed in DOJ. Hopefully we managed to convince you that applying to be indexed in DOJ is worth the assessment process of going through and discovering what your journal needs to be ready for indexation in DOJ. But it definitely can increase your submissions, your quality, reputation, and visibility. I mentioned that we have about 13 ambassadors and that we have just gone through a review of our ambassador program. There will be more information about this in the coming weeks on our blog. But our ambassadors are volunteers from all over the world who promote journal quality and the importance of standards, advocate for open access, promote DOJ, support DOJ indexing for local journal editors and publishers. So they do a lot of outreach and a lot of support for local journals. Ina is one of our ambassadors, and we're really happy to have Ina on board as an ambassador for DOJ. She's absolutely fantastic. And I think she's a good point of contact for you guys when you have questions. In 2023, our ambassadors took part in 61 public engagements and events around the world. So our ambassadors are very active in the different regions that they're representing throughout the different countries. I also want to highlight that DOAJ is an open scholarly infrastructure. That means that DOAJ cannot be bought or sold. We're committed to openness, diversity, and accountability. We're owned by the community or for the community. We've adopted policies or principles of open scholarly infrastructures in 2022 and done a self-assessment. We collaborate with other open infrastructures to drive change towards an open and transparent culture. We are involved with a lot of different kind of community projects or organizations. We're one of the funders of Think, Check, Submit, the Open Access Toolkit, Publisher Learning and Community Exchange, and we're partners of Diamas, Craftaway, and Open Air, to mention a few. I really want to highlight the Open Access Journals Toolkit and how this can be beneficial to you. The Open Access Toolkit is a self-guided online resource. It's completely free to use. It was launched in 2023 by WASPA and DOAJ. The content was created by a diverse editorial board of experts in the field from different parts of the world, and the editorial board is responsible for keeping the content up to date. The resource is currently available in English and French, and soon also will be available in Arabic. So this resource breaks down essential information for open access journals. Everything from getting started, running a journal, indexing, staffing, policies, and infrastructure. There's lots of different guides on there, which are, as I mentioned, completely free and self-guided. So depending on what kind of support your journal needs, there's lots of different aspects you can get from the Open Access Journal Toolkit, and I highly recommend looking through it. I'm going to hand over to Ina now, who's going to talk to you about the criteria for inclusion.
Thanks, Kat, and thanks for sharing that valuable background information about the Directory of Open Access Journals so that everybody can understand that it's a trusted directory. It's the only directory listing open access journals, and yes, they go through quite a strict quality process before being included in the Directory of Open Access Journals. So Kat is based in Norway, and I'm speaking to you from South Africa at the Academy of Sciences of South Africa. Kat earlier referred to the DHET, that's our Department of Higher Education and Training. So the Directory of Open Access Journals is acknowledged by our Department of Higher Education and Training as an accredited list. If an author publishes in any of those journal titles, they would receive funding from our Department of Higher Education and Training. So it is an important income stream for universities in South Africa to publish articles in journals listed on the Directory of Open Access Journals. So we have government support on national level, and it would be great if all countries in Africa can work towards having this list acknowledged and accredited by their respective governments. And that's also why we have the Zimbabwean Academy of Sciences on board, the Zimbabwe Council of Higher Education, and the Zimbabwe Library Consortium. So together we might just be stronger, and it would be great to take hands in getting more Zimbabwean scholarly journals on the DOAJ to demonstrate that we also contribute to the knowledge base globally, and but we have our own scholarly journals. My background is, I also have good background and knowledge in the PKP Open Journal Systems software. So I just want to mention there's great alignment between PKP OJS, the software to run your home journal, and then the Directory of Open Access Journals, which is very exciting. But without further ado, I'm now going to dive into the technicalities, requirements for your scholarly journal to be included in the Directory of open access journals. So let's see, can I click? Yes. So first of all, important is that your scholarly journal has a secure website address. In other words, what we mean by that is that HTTPS should form part of the domain name. It should not just be HTTP. This means by having the S, this means a security certificate for the journal has been registered with a security certificate entity. So what is this security certificate? It's a small data file used to confirm the authenticity, identity, and reliability of a website or web application. In other words, demonstrating that this website is valid. The file contains verified information about the publisher and the domain. So yes, the journal website can be trusted and it's legit. There I have two examples, HTTP as opposed to HTTPS. So the one on the right-hand side is what is required. We also do not, when we open your journal, we do not want to see intrusive advertising, pop-ups, movement, etc. And the journal should not contain any misleading metrics or over-optimization of metrics. So it should not be in your face when you open the journal the first time. This is an example of a journal which I'm familiar with. I would like to share with you the South African Journal of Science, and this year we will be celebrating 150 years. Although the journal has an impact factor, a site score from Elsevier, etc., it's not displayed prominently. It's hidden under about the journal, because for us, it's not all about journal metrics. We rather focus on article level metrics. So what impact does individual articles have on the environment and the world out there? Next, the journal website, in addition to the website address, is very important. The information must be available and easily findable. So what should appear on this website? Information about the aims and the focus and scope of a journal, which kind of articles and content would you like to publish in your journal, and it should be limited by geographic area, or if not, then indicate as such. If you only focus on research articles from Zimbabwe, say so. Be very clear. It should have an open access policy, and there's lots of examples of open access policies on the web. And we can also share with you some of those. Also indicate on the website whether you charge authors for page fees. In other words, do you require authors to pay once their article has been approved for publication? Even if you don't charge, please indicate it. Be as transparent as possible with regards to the information on your website. In an open access journal environment, of course, the journal will be open access for all readers, but there are open access journals who still charge author page fees because they need those monies to manage the journal, and they have some expenses. It's not a problem if you are an open access journal and you charge realistic author page fees or APCs or author charges. It's the same thing. The instructions or guidelines for authors with regards to the criteria the article needs to adhere to needs to be clearly indicated on the website. What kind of font should they use? How should they reference material? Should they use the APA style or the Harvard style? How many words must the article consist of? And many more requirements that journals have. It will make the life of the layout editors and the copy editors so much easier if the authors have clarity on how it should look like in the end. The contact details for the journal should also be online, and also an email address where authors can reach out to the journal. Furthermore, it should have an editorial board, which includes the editor of the journal, of course, and the affiliations for all the members should be indicated, including the country. So this is an example of what such an editorial team would look like. And at the bottom, the editorial board or editorial advisory board or editorial advisory panel. Different journals call it different things. But here in this example, we have the editor-in-chief or main editor with a link to his email address and a link to his org ID. The org ID, a unique identifier for a researcher. And when a researcher have an org ID profile, one can click there and see that this person can be trusted. He has a good track record of publication. This journal also has a managing editor assisting the editor, main editor, with the same, you can see there, the affiliation and the country clearly indicated. And the same applies to the editorial advisory board. You don't need to provide the emails, but it will be really helpful to make it clear to the Directory of Open Access Journals when we evaluate your journal for possible inclusion, that these people can be trusted. They have a good track record of research and publication. And this is just an example. We encourage our researchers and our journals to encourage their authors and also all the users, the reviewers, everybody that plays a role within the journal should have an org ID with their personal details document. And that's the address where you can go and register your org ID profile, and it's also free of charge. Another aspect that's very important when it comes to the journal, on top of the web address, the journal website content, is the peer review process. A good quality journal, whether it's open access or subscription journal access, you have to have a peer review policy in place. So there's different kinds of policies. There's no one, but at least there's not a recommended one. From our side, there is a recommended one, which I will come to just now. But it's important for us that good quality journals must apply a rigorous review process by peers or experts in the field on which the article focus. The peer review should be done by at least 2 independent reviewers. In other words, there should be no conflict of interest between the authors of the article or the manuscript and the potential reviewers. Editorial review is one kind of review, and editorial review is only allowed when the journals are from the arts or humanities. If it's from the natural sciences, it won't be acceptable for inclusion in the DOAJ, for example, editorial review, that is now. If it's a student journal run by students, then faculty oversight is required, and it must be made clear on the website under the peer review policy for the journal. So please, when you run your journal, describe the journal review process on the journal website in great detail. You don't have to mention the names of the reviewers, but explain it step by step so that we can get a good sense of what it entails. It can be a paragraph, it can be half a page, it can be a full page. Just make it as clear and transparent as possible. It's not a requirement that all the manuscripts submitted to your journal is submitted to a plagiarism system, but we highly recommend that you use a plagiarism checker, such as Authenticate or Turnitin, to check that the journal article the content in the journal article was not plagiarized. It's also to protect the journal itself and and for your journal to continue to remain a trusted journal, because once regarded as a journal that published plagiarized content, it will be very, very difficult to restore that image of yours. So please be super careful, and rather, when you've decided which articles to publish, subject those articles to a plagiarism detection tool to confirm that no plagiarism occurred in those articles. And yes, like I've said, state the name of a checking service or protocol used. For example, if you use Authenticate, then indicate that, or Turnitin, or whatever other tool you use to check for plagiarism. Okay, so I have referred to editorial peer review, editorial review, but there are many other kinds of peer reviews. So there's an explanation behind each number, below each number, and rest assured that we will share these slides with you and also the recording once completed. So ordinary peer review means that the author or editor and peer reviewers all know the identity of each other. And the peer review is confined to only those people, the author, the editor, and the peer reviewers. I want to compare number 2 with number 6. So number 6 has open in front. Open peer review means the authors, the editor, and peer reviewers will know who the other persons are, but the review process can be open in several other ways, with a focus on transparency. For example, to publishing the peer review as open access once it's been conducted. So the authors, editors, and peer reviewers will have this open discussion, and it can also take place through preprints before the publication. So that's extreme and something that's not been well adopted in South Africa. As far as I know, we are starting to experiment with open peer review. As far as the South African Journal of Science concerns, we are publishing the peer review comments and suggestions as an additional file to the article, so that the whole world can see the peer review. Then there's also anonymous peer review. This means that the authors do not know the identity of the peer reviewers, but the peer reviewers themselves and the editors know the identity of the authors. What we recommend and what is best practice and have been best practice up to now is double anonymous peer review. This is where the review, in this review, neither the authors nor the peer reviewers know each other's identity. Only the editors will know, or the editor will know everyone's identities. And it's the role of the editor or the journal manager to make sure the identities of the reviewers and the authors do not appear on the manuscript or anywhere in the metadata. So only the editor knows. When there's post-publication peer review, instead of doing the review before the publication, the journal provides a platform to enable the review to be done in public, with the community acting as peer reviewers. Anyone can make comments on the article published, and identities are not hidden. One can even combine two forms of peer review. For example, you can combine double anonymous peer review, then publish the paper, the final paper, and then invite the public to still comment on the publication and stimulate the dialogue around the content discussed in the paper. And then any other type of peer review, as long as you have a peer review policy. If you do not have a peer review policy, your journal will not be eligible for possible inclusion in the Directory of Open Access. So then we come to licensing. In the days when we only had print journals, we did not apply licensing. So licensing is because of journal articles and content being openly accessible online. So the purpose of licensing, signing a license published online, is to inform the readers how they may use and reuse the content that has been published. It also informs readers of any reuse that is not allowed. And the purpose of it is to protect the author and the journal against unauthorized use. The Directory of Open Access Journals recommends the use of Creative Commons licenses or the equivalent, and there are 6 licenses from which you can choose. When you decide on a licensing policy for your journal, you can choose any of those licenses, and there's no charges when you use and apply the licenses. There's a tool on the Creative Commons page which helps you to choose a license for your journal. And once you have chosen a license that will apply to all articles published in your journal, you have to state those licensing terms on the journal website. Okay, just want to move forward. It seems oh gosh, there I'm moving forward too fast now. Sorry, I'm just going to go back.
I'm sorry. I think it is my internet connection that is messing with you with the slide.
No problem, Kat. If I can just move back to copyright of licensing. Oof, it still doesn't want to move back. Okay, all right. So here are the 6 licenses listed on the right-hand side. This is the most open license, where we do not restrict the users of an article at all. CC means Creative Commons. No, CC means Creative Commons. BY, okay, we don't have the abbreviation here, but it means as open, people can use it in any way. But like, okay, sorry, it's attribution. Sorry, my mistake. BI stands for attribution. Anybody can use any article. They can copy, distribute, display, perform, and remix the article. But the condition is they must always cite, acknowledge, accredit the original article where it was published from your journal. And this applies with any research material which you use. You always have to cite if you use content from elsewhere, and acknowledge the original publication. SA stands for share alike. So others can distribute your work only under a license identical to the one you have chosen for your work. So if the original work has a CC BY license, then you can also use it, but you must also distribute your work under a CC BY license. NC stands for no commercialization. It means others can copy, distribute, display, perform or remake your work, but for non-commercial purposes only. We had a lawyer that advised us that an NC is not the ideal, because when somebody wants to publish a chapter in a book, which is going to be, and the book is going to be commercially available, this really causes a barrier to the book being published. So I would say consider it twice when, and should you want to use that one. ND means ND is very restrictive. Other can only copy, distribute, display, or perform verbatim copies of your work. NC and SA, a combination of these two, and NC and ND, a combination of these two. So this one, the most open and flexible, which we recommend, and the bottom one's more restrictive. Okay, and there's the link where you can access these licenses. Okay, and this is just an extract from the landing page of an article published in the South African Journal of Science with the abstract, the significance of the article, etc. It's published in this issue. It's in the section research article. But look here, there the license is clearly displayed. It's embedded as part of the article metadata for this specific article. Being displayed as such, it also means it's machine readable. And there's a link to the Creative Commons that applies, for a license that applies for this journal and for this article. Can I ask, are there any questions at this stage? You're welcome to put up your hand, and Kat or Blessing will grant you talking rights. I'm just thinking of the time now. It might be, I don't want to become too monotonous. And if you have a question at this stage, please ask me now.
There was someone who raised their hand earlier, but put it down again. I asked if they could put the question in the chat. I'm not able to, I'm not able to access the chat and do lots of stuff while you have remote control over my screen, which is what I'm trying to get back to. Sorry.
Sorry, if there's anyone that has a question, please put up your hand. Blessing, can you perhaps allow the person to talk?
It's all right. I'll do that. I'm checking if there's anyone who has raised their hand. Then I'll allow them to ask.
Okay. I hope I'm not going too fast and that you can clearly follow me. Please indicate if I'm going too fast. Okay, so it seems as if there are no questions at this stage, but please feel free to type your questions in the text box or make a note, and then at the end of this presentation, we will give you another opportunity to ask your question. Thanks. So we continue with copyright. Also have a copyright policy for your journal. Who will the copyright of an article published in your journal belong to? So the copyright can belong to the authors or to the journal or to the publisher. We don't have a requirement with regards to that, as long as your copyright policy is clear and that you apply it to all the articles published in that journal. But in an open access environment, best practice is for the authors of the article to retain the copyright. But as I've said, the DOAJ accept journals where the copyright is transferred from the authors to the journal or publisher. State your copyright policy on the journal website. And we also recommend that you enter into an author agreement with the authors and preserve that agreement. So So the copyright responsibility is fully on the author, or whatever the case may be in your journal's case. But I have on the next screen shared examples of 2 author agreements, which you can have a look at. Just struggling to move forward. If you can click for me, Kat. I don't know, maybe it's faster on your side. There you go. So here is an example of the South African Journal of Science publishing agreement between the journal and the author, and the one for African Journal on Conflict Resolution, to protect yourself as the journal and also the authors. And I'm not going to go into depth with that, but these are 2 examples that you can perhaps learn from. Okay, moving to the next slide. Let's see what's this is a screen capture from PKP-OJS. Can I get an indication in the chat box whether what system do you use to manage your journal? Do you use PKP-OJS? Do you just use an ordinary website to manage your journal? Or what is it that you use? Please give me an indication in the chat box. Type the title of your journal as well as the software that you use to manage and publish your journal. It would be very nice to know that.
There's someone who's raised their hand.
Okay, great. Thanks. Can you allow them to talk, please?
Yes, I will allow you to talk now, Francisco.
But the rest of us, I'm going to type South African Journal of Science, and we use PKP-OJS software. So please share with us in the chat box what the journal title you work with and what software you are using. Okay, well, Francisca, you're welcome to ask your question. Thanks.
Sorry, it's like I'm trying to control different parts here, and it's doing the slides.
Zimbabwe Association, can you perhaps indicate what software do you use to manage the Journal of Technological Sciences? Oh, wonderful. I see Bert also uses OJS for Humanities Southern Africa Journal. Wonderful. It's great to learn about these journals published by Zimbabwe, and we hope we can work with you to make the journals become DOAJ compliant so that you can apply for inclusion in the DOAJ website. And to access the DOAJ page, yes, okay.
I'm just noting that we've got 30 minutes left of the webinar.
Okay, so Francisco,
just in terms of the number of slides we have left, and time for Q&A as well.
Okay, all right. Let me then rather leave the questions for now and rush through the slides. In OJS, the authors are required to tick these boxes and when they submit the paper. So you can make it a requirement or that they must complete the consent form or the author agreement and attach it as a file. Okay, so next slide. Struggling to move, okay. It's just an important note that ideas, in essence, if you have an idea of an article or information about a scientific discovery, those ideas themselves are not protected by copyright. However, the moment you express those ideas in a tangible form, such as writing an article or recording it, the expression becomes eligible for copyright protection. So that's why copyright policy within your journal is quite important. Next slide, also on copyright. Restrictions are sometimes imposed by the publisher or the journal, even though the author retains the copyright. And that, for example, can be where the publisher requires exclusive publishing rights. The author will no longer hold the copyright without restrictions. And also, another example, the publisher can require a transfer of commercial rights or an exclusive grant of commercial rights. But once again, the author will no longer retain copyright without restrictions. All rights reserved is never appropriate for open access content. And this phrase is no longer really used. So you can read up about what it means, but it's a phrase no longer used in the journal environment. Can I move forward? So just to summarize, copyright best practice, authors retain copyright of their work, with the publisher of a journal having the right of first publication. It's recommended, but it's not a requirement for inclusion in DOAJ. Where the authors also retain full publishing rights, the publisher is granted a non-exclusive rights to publish and distribute. Publishers cannot license rights to third parties. The authors can reuse their work without restriction. And it's also, once again, recommended but not required for inclusion in DOAJ. So next week, we would like to encourage you, once you feel your journal adheres to all these requirements, to apply for inclusion in the directory of open access journals. Okay, my slide. We can move to the next slide. And the next one, all you need to do is to go to this address at the bottom, https://doaj.org, and register an account, which is also free of charge. Once you have your registration logins, you can log in. This is what the registration form would look like. Yes, thank you, Kat. Just add your name, etc. And then once you obtain the password, just repeat it and click update. And then go to apply, click on application form, and just check your email, because a confirmation email will be sent to your email. And this is what the application form looks like. It's very straightforward. It's a wizard. You just simply respond to these questions and move from 1 to 7. It's 7 stages. There's an example of an open access policy if you want to see one. And yes, and click on next or click on these circles. So what happens when you apply for your journal to be included in the directory of open access journals? So I move to the next slide. So to be considered, like I said, the journal must meet the DOAJ basic criteria as explained in the former slides. It must be fully open access, and so no embargoes to apply. And you must be actively publishing peer-reviewed research. Okay, you can move to the next screen. A triage team may be responsible for quickly evaluating incoming new journal applications. So doing a quick desk review. So the application, once you've completed that application, it will go to the, once the publisher or editor of a journal did the application, it will go to this triage team who do some initial checks. It will then go to an editorial team who will do an independent review, and a final decision will be made by the DOAJ managing editor, and feedback will then be provided to you as publishing editor. So the initial check on the next screen, what does this initial check comprise of? The DOAJ initial check will check the ISSN and that it's registered at the ISSN organization. And specifically, if you're in hosting and publishing an open access online journal, it will only have an online ISSN. But if you also previously printed the journal, it will have an online ISSN and a print ISSN. Add them both to your journal website. The journal website should be online and available. The URL must resolve. That's HTTPS URL. The full text articles in PDF should be available without delay or restriction. You can also have articles in other formats, XML or EPUB or whatever, but PDF the minimum. And the copyright and licensing information should be available. So once the initial check has been done by the triage team, it will go from there to the triage team, and then the editorial team will check the content. It will be checked by the editorial team whether the content is of good quality, etc. But should the triage team reject this journal application, on the next screen, you will receive an email telling you what is wrong. The rejection at the initial stage can be, in most cases, the journal is not fully open access, or the ISSN is not registered with the ISSN body at issn.org, or there's not enough research content that has been published. DOAJ require at minimum 5 full-text peer-reviewed research articles per annum. Kat, maybe you can share with us how many years is it required for the journal to have published before being considered for inclusion in the DOAJ? They can't apply in their first year, right?
I think it is 2 years, but now I'm questioning myself. But it needs to be actively publishing, which means like it needs to have publications in the last years. There are, I think, some exceptions sometimes for newly established journals if they are other aspects of the journal that is completely fine, and then the journal has 1 full year with 5 journal articles, for example. But the most important thing is that it's actively publishing.
Okay. We don't want to see any interruptions in publications. So say, for instance, your journal started in 2021 and you published 5 articles and you continued in 2022, but only 2 articles. 2023, you did not publish anything. And suddenly in 2024, you've published 5 articles. We don't want to see that kind of fluctuation. There must not be any interruptions in publication. So maintain a good publishing track record. It will also be rejected if full-text articles are not available individually. The URLs and applications don't lead to the information required, and if a journal website does not contain any licensing information, also on individual article level. Next slide. Okay. If a full review has been done, the journal might be rejected based on the following criteria. Incorrect information is given in the application form. Required information is unclear or missing from the website. The information is not the same in all languages used on the website. But if you decide your journal is published in English, then the website should be in English and the articles should be in English. So standardize the language. It can't be in English on one page and then in Sotho or another language on another page, okay? It should be consistent. You can have it in 2 languages, but that must then be applied right through the website. The peer review process is inadequate. That's very important. If licensing or copyright policy is unclear, it will be rejected. If a journal makes false claims to be indexed in Web of Science or the Directory of Open Access or other services, it will also be rejected. And if a journal does not employ good publishing practices in general, it will also be rejected. Okay, next slide. Then a final decision will be made by the managing editor. He or she will review the application and the recommendations made by the editorial team. The editor may undertake further review or return with queries. and he or she will make a final decision to accept or reject. And once accepted, it will be published on the directory immediately. You can move to the next slide, Kat. If rejected, you will also receive a communication from the Directory of Open Access Journals. An automated email will be sent to you if accepted or rejected. If rejected, the publisher or the editor must usually wait for another 6 months before reapplying. Next slide. The current application time is, for now, is around 3 months. So don't expect an answer within 3 months. We have a huge load of applications to attend to and to review. You can see the number of applications we've received over the years. The items submitted are far more than the items is huge. In the end, we decide which ones to accept and which ones to reject. So the ones rejected are far more than the ones accepted in the end. Move to the next slide. So we hope to, through the DOAJ criteria and the application process, and sometimes the rejection process, to help you to increase your journal standards and advise how to improve the journal quality. And DOAJ is often seen as a first step for your journal to apply in other indexes. This is just some feedback we received from participants. The one said DOAJ indexing was a difficult but doable process. We enjoyed working with the DOAJ team as support in the work process. Next slide. And another one said, firstly, our application was rejected as we did not have proper copyright arrangements. After that, we consulted with some experts and lawyers, adopted the Creative Commons copyright model, and arranged everything else in order to really become an open access journal. So good experiences from those who applied for inclusion of their journals. Next slide, Kat. There's a lot of help and documentation available. As Kat said, I am the ambassador for the Directory of Open Access Journals in the Southern Africa region. So if you have any questions or need any guidance or support, you can email me at ina@doaj.org or the DOAJ help desk. And there on the last slide, you can get our email addresses. Katrin can also assist. So prior to submitting that application form and not being ready, rather have us work with you and check that your journal adheres to the minimum requirements for possible inclusion, and we will gladly assist. There's also a PDF checklist which you can download and against which you can check your journal to see whether it adheres. Yes, if you look at the help and documentation guide to applying reference version of an application form, that's the one. You can download it in PDF. It's not a secret. It's openly available, what it is we look for. And there's also the DOAJ application guide for OJS journals. Thank you so much, colleagues. On that note, I'm done. So thank you for bearing with me. And I'm going to hand over to Blessing. I believe it's now time for question and answers. We have another 15 minutes, right?
Yes, we have 15 minutes for the Q&A. Thank you very much, Katrina and Anna, for the wonderful presentations. We now invite questions, but if you check in the Q&A tab, there are some 2 questions that were asked there. The first one came from Dallas Gudoshawa. She's saying, what resources or support does DOAJ offer to new journals that are trying to establish themselves on the open access landscape?
Okay. Dallas, I think the criteria would be a great place to start. First of all, you need to find a host for your journal, of course. You need to have a budget, although it can be small, for starting your journal. You need to decide what platform are you going to use to publish your journal. But I think the DOAJ criteria are a good starting point. Plan your journal. Identify who's going to be the editorial board. From the editorial board, invite people to join your editorial board. Then select a managing editor, editor-in-chief, a managing editor. And that team is important. They need to advise on policy, copyright policy, peer review policy, etc. Licensing policy, open access policy, all those policies, that's a requirement as part of being considered for possible inclusion. Cathy, would you like to add to that question?
I've just put in the chat, and also as I mentioned, as a resource, the Open Access Journal Toolkit really is a good place to go for information and guidance in terms of setting up a journal or improving an established journal. And I mean, at DOJ, the application process itself, we've heard from many journals that this has helped a lot of journals increase their standards, increase their procedures, increase their knowledge around copyright and open access. Because once you're forced into kind of the application process of having to answer all these questions, you have to go back and figure it out. So feel free to start an application process, and then remember to save it. And you can get back to it so that you can start the process, figure out what are the things that you need to figure out, and then come back to the application form. And in the meantime, as Ina said, we're here to support as well. That's what the Ambassador Program is here for. And sessions like this, we really love to hear from you guys. What are the needs from your community, and in what ways can DOJ support that? I also mentioned that we do partner with other organizations, and Ina mentioned as well, there's a huge collaboration with PKP and OJS. So it's in our interest to understand what the community wants and then see if we can deliver that in some kind of way by collaborating with others.
Yes, and maybe a tip for Zimbabwe and what we did in South Africa, we established a Google mailing list for all scholarly journals in South Africa, and in which we communicate important information, developments on PKP OJS, because that's also our preferred software. And maybe you can also consider establishing a community of practice where you support one another in terms of PKP OJS, because I'm positive there's a lot of knowledge in terms of OJS in your country and how it connects with DOAJ. So we want you, although you can apply for your journal to be included in the DOAJ, one of the options you will have is also to upload your metadata for articles from your journal to the DOAJ database. And so please make use of that function. And OJS has an automated plugin where it's automated the process of uploading the metadata to DOAJ. So I hope that answers your question. I see there's also a question from Bert. Hot issues having low journal uptime. Is there a way around this issue with mirror services or the Wayback Machine Internet Archive or an offsite support host to ensure accessibility at any time? Journal uptime equals journal website uptime. That's one thing you don't want. You want 100% uptime. And it depends on where your journal is hosted and the IT in place for that journal. So, for example, our journals are hosted with a server in the cloud, Xnilo. I have a system administrator who monitors the server so that it's always up. He has an alert system which tells him when the server is down or the journals are down. You never want your journals to be down. So that's in internal arrangement. It could be that you have a central, maybe Zimbabwe can consider hosting one OJS for all the journals in the country. In other words, a national OJS platform. Or one university, the Africa University, can have one big OJS installation and host all the journals there, and then have system support. But the uptime of your journal is linked to where your journal is hosted, and the IT provided. Do you want to add something there, Kat or Blessing?
Yes, I was actually typing here. Of course, the downtime is a challenge, and like you've said, that is important. Please consider cloud hosting for your journal if you have challenges. But I would also want to point out that we have a project in Africa. I can't remember the correct name, but it's called the Continental Open Scholarship Platform Project, which is supported by the Association of African Universities and University of Cape Town libraries. Please, you can consult them. They are available to ensure that they host your journals. And again, I would like to point out that these same practices that we've heard about now are the same practices that they would expect you to adhere to so that your journal is considered for hosting there. Thank you.
I see in the chat there's support for a community of practice for Zimbabwean scholarly journals, Blessing. So maybe it's something you can consider. I don't know who would be the appropriate and in the best position to take leadership on this, establishing and owning and managing the mailing list. But then you can communicate this kind of information about services offered by UCT to all who might be interested. It's just so much easier to reach everybody. I'm positive many of the people who have joined and registered for this webinar would be interested in joining your community of practice.
Yeah, thank you. It's something that I've taken note and consider that I'm sure it will help in taking us forward.
Wonderful. Are there any
I
other
also-
questions?
I noticed that Israel has also commented on this in the chat and raised their hand. So Israel, I'm going to allow you to talk if you had something to contribute to this.
Thank you so much. I hope my microphone is on.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I was saying that the community of practice will be a best way of journals to collaborate together. For example, other journals are already established and they've already walked through some of the processes of setting up editorial boards and also coming up with guidelines. So sometimes maybe in other institutions, they are still finding their way. But if you have an institution which has gone through the process, they can be able to give you a hand on some of the issues. And also to say into what Dr. Chiparausha was saying, we also got support for our journal from the University of Cape Town. So that was a good experience that they helped us with some of the issues. So thank you.
Wonderful. That's good to know. So help is really readily available. There are existing platforms that can host your journal. We are also aware of AJOL, the African Journals Online, but I think at UCT you have more flexibility in managing the journal in the back end, the workflow in the back end. So which is also important because OJS offers, I know UCT also uses OJS. It offers a web page and a journal management system, 2-in-1. Okay, so there's huge support for a support group. Let's see.
There's another, so Bert, who's been driving this conversation a bit through the Q&A, has raised his hand, so I'm going to allow them to talk as well.
Yes, Bert.
Thank you, Helen. I hope you can hear me. Thank you. Yes, I was just trying to add on to the issue that, yes, we have cloud, but we're trying to avoid the situation where we have everything in one basket. I think, it's kind of dangerous having all your journals on, if you've like multiple journals for one university, and you have all of them hosted on one particular server, there are more risks attached to that, whether it's DDoS attacks, hacking. So you just want to have that like a fallback. So I was hoping to get some ideas on whether mirror servers are being used and whether DOAJ is aware of techniques that we could adopt to avoid any of these threats that may come to our sites. It's not just the electricity or the downtime of these servers, and it's just where is it housed and how to avoid being attacked.
Kat, would you like
That's
to
a
go
very
first?
technical, yeah, a very technical question that I don't have the skill set to answer, but I'm meeting with our platform manager, I think an hour after this webinar. So what I'll do is I'll wait to send out the email with the slides and the recording until I have posed this question to him. In terms of kind of like in general, applying to DOJ, we are aware that there are downtimes on different journals, and we don't reject a journal because we can't access the website immediately. A lot of the time this means we will wait again and then see if it's accessible later on. And then we also have an ongoing chat on we use Slack to chat and interact because none of us sit in the same country, we're all in different places. So usually then we check with each other if anyone can access a website, if we can't access a specific website. But the other part of your question is very like technical, so I'd like to talk to Dom Mitchell, our platform manager, and then get back to you, which I will send out in the email that I send to everyone.
Thank you so much.
I noticed we have two hands. We have, yeah.
Maybe if I can come in, what participants should also understand is that when we host the journals online, it's like any other information source that is online. It is similar to a web page. It is similar to anything else that is accessible online. So the standard practices that apply when it comes to securing any content that is available online would apply. If it means you have to come up with a mirror page, do so. If it means backing up, please do so. Online journals are not an exception. They are prone to attacks. They are prone to anything. They are prone to power cuts and all that. So whatever you do with your website, whatever you do with any of your online platforms, the same will still apply. I hope this helps. Thank you.
If I can, I just want to quickly share an example from our installation of OJS, which you can access at journals.assaf.org.za, and there's a button for data privacy. So how do we protect your personal and other data? First of all, this platform is hosted by Ignilo, that is our service host. They have tools in place to prevent large-scale DDoS attacks, which nowadays is a result of artificial intelligence trying to harvest our content and our data. So they really keep our servers busy. And they keep their server software and hardware up to date to prevent hackers from exploiting vulnerabilities, and they have ready to deploy and disaster recovery and accident plans. So you can read more about that. We have a monitoring system. We have a web application firewall. The website runs on SSL. We create backups. We archive our journals with a dark archive, so which is not online available. So please have a look at this. I'll drop it in the chat box and see if it can be of some help for you. That's also open information for our users and our journals, so that they can see these journals are managed in a trusted way, and we do our best to protect any hacks and all those things that happens to content nowadays. Any
Dr.
other
Maturo, you
questions?
can come in. You wanted to say something? Dr. Maturo wanted to say something?
Yes, I just want to add something that apart from the advice that we are getting from DOAJ, I think there is need for us to work with our ICT directors so that we follow the policies that are there at our institution. Thank you.
Excellent. Definitely, you need your IT. You need a good relationship with your IT. Thank you, Dr. Rosemary. Anything else, Blessing?
There was a question in the Q&A.
Okay, I can see you've answered another question that had come from Lucky, who was asking if journals that are indexed by DOAJ are credible. Yes, indeed. Like we said earlier on, we were indicating that DOAJ is equally a good platform like any other, which I'm not mentioning names here, but please, we are talking of credibility here. We are talking of quality assurance. So once you are on this platform, you are good to go. In fact, you should feel proud to be on DOAJ. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to.
I don't see if there are any questions. Colleagues, if you're picking any questions, you can respond to them.
Sorry, I think my internet is lagging a bit, but I just want to follow up. I'm posting a link as well into the answer from I'm responding to Lucky that we have full transparency in terms of the journals that we index and the journals that we remove from our index. We do experience that journals change the editorial board and then change their practices and then no longer adhere to our criteria. So I'm going to share a spreadsheet that is openly available that people can look through, and you can see what journals have been added and what journals have been removed from DOAJ.
All right, thank you. I can see our time is up. It was quite interesting, but maybe we should wind up. I understand colleagues have other commitments elsewhere, but I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. Thank you, participants, for your time and the responses that came. Of course, they also opened up a discussion, which was quite important. So thank you very much for taking your time. And to the panelists, thank you very much. And it's quite difficult to do the wrap up now. If it was an easy task, I was going to summarize what Ina and Catherine said, but it's quite difficult. But what I just want to say, picking from what Katrina mentioned, is that when it comes to open science, open access, we would want to remove all the barriers to research. So that is quite important. And maybe what is also important for us, this is a call to all of us researchers, librarians, publishers, and editors to ensure that we respond to this call, maybe to quote Yuma Sekela Brayu. He says, I want to be there when people start to turn it around. As editors, as journal publishers, please be there to turn around your journals. And to wrap up what Ina said, I can't say it was quite a lot, but what I've picked from her presentation is that we are stronger together. And I would also want to point out that her presentation was more of a step-by-step guide. There were more of SOPs, standard operating procedures, when it comes to ensuring that we adhere to the expected standards for our journals. In fact, she gave us the best practices which we are expected to follow. And whatever is being done by DOAJ, it's in the open. It's all in terms of openness. So if we follow that, we are also good to go. I can go on and on and on, but the bottom line is, it's quite difficult to summarize what the two ladies said, but it was all important. And the colleagues were being informed that the slides and the presentation, the recording is going to be shared very soon today. And if you've got any questions, Ina, Catherine, Rosemary, and all of us are available to assist. And as the open access coordinator for Zimbabwe, I pledge to see to it that we give it a try and come up with a community of practice with regards to online journal publishing on an open access model. Otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good day. We are done. Bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.